All right, what's good? Welcome to yet another live stream of the Breaking Conservatarian broadcast. With me, your favorite conservatarian, Jeff Charles, and we prefer truth over narrative, principles over personalities, all that good stuff. So, going to go ahead and wait for some people to come in here. I'm going to share this on Twitter. Thanks for joining me once again. Be sure to subscribe. Let's see if I can get that right. Yep, subscribe. Thank you if you haven't already. And please share this video. I really appreciate it. Just going to wait a few minutes here. While we're waiting, I just got a notification on my phone. Leon Spinks passed away. I guess he was dealing with several different types of cancers, but he was only 67. And if you know who Leon Spinks is, he actually beat Muhammad Ali when he was younger. So I'm not exactly a boxing historian, but just thought it was interesting. I mean, I kind of remember hearing his name when I was little, so it's kind of tragic there, only 67 years old. But yeah, let's see here. Let's see what we've got here. We got people in the chats already. Okay. Dang, I haven't even shared the stream yet. This is awesome. I've already got more than I normally have. Okay, let's see. What's up, Marlene, Befrance, Charles? Befrance, I'm probably messing your first name up, something horrible. Yeah, you'll have to tell me how to pronounce it. But we got to figure out if we're related. We got the same last name. We got to figure this out. All right, we got to get together sometime. All right. What's up, Sister Felicia? Glad you can make it. Hopefully it's not past your bedtime. Let's see. Wendy, I haven't talked to you in a while. How you doing? All right, well, let me go ahead and share this real quick. Hold on. All right. Turn that off. How's everybody? How's everybody's weekend going? Let me know in the chat while I'm doing this. I'm still getting the hang of using this software, but I'm getting better. I upgraded to the paid version, so I can do all kinds of cool stuff now. Oh, I did get your name right, Befrance. Okay, good. So I didn't make myself look like an idiot. All right. Copy that link right quick. What we're going to talk about today is very interesting. You probably have already either heard of the story, or you may have even read it. It's about that article in Time magazine. It's a very long article. Like I read it, I was reading through it yesterday, and we talked about it on the Red and Black Show, which, by the way, you should also subscribe there too. Type in Red plus Black Show. You'll see it come up, and that'll help us out quite a bit. We've got some really big things coming up. Me, Kira Davis, Lenny McAllister, Dr. Chris Metzler. We got some good things going on. We've got some awesome stuff coming up, so be sure to subscribe. You should already be subscribed anyway, because it's an awesome show. Not just because I'm in it, but mostly because I'm in it. All right. All right. All right. Oh, you're making tacos, Wendy. What kind of tacos? I want to know. I'm starting to get a little hungry. All right. Let me make sure I got everything set up here. So, like I said, we're going to talk about the article that Time magazine published. I think it was two or 3 days ago, something like that. But okay, hold on a second. Wendy, what the hell is a regular taco? I mean, is it beef, chicken, fish taco? I need to know what we're working with here, all right? But yeah, just to give you a little bit of background before we dive in. We all saw how the election went, right? The presidential election, and we're probably still debating it, and it's probably be debated for quite a while now. And the article basically just laid everything out. I mean, everything that conservatives have been saying about this election, well, not everything, but a lot of the things that we were saying about this past election season and also past presidential elections is 100% true. And this article basically laid it all out. Now, it may not have said it in the terms that I just said it, and we're going to get into how they framed this whole thing, but it's true. And during this past election season, according to Time magazine, a gaggle of progressive groups, institutions, individuals, politicians, members of the activist media, the activist press, and a lot of other people got together and they colluded to swing the election Biden's way. Now, to be fair, this article does mention that also some conservatives were involved in this too, but it's a little bit more nuanced than that, and I'll discuss that later in this video. But suffice it to say, this is spearheaded by progressives. So it wasn't really there weren't really a whole lot of conservatives involved in this. There were actually Trump supporters who actually liked Trump and wanted him reelected, who were involved to a certain extent. But I'll cover that in a second. But this was, like you said, Berfrance, it was all planned out, and that's what was going on. So, but the way they did it, one, I mean, some of you might not like me saying this, but I kind of got to give it to them. They were playing chess. I mean, when you talk about Trump always playing 5 million D chess, no, that's what the Democrats were doing this time. They played the game very well. They were on point. And honestly, the conservatives couldn't really counter it. Now, the race was still close despite that. I mean, when you think about when you see everything that they had to do to get Trump out of office and they just barely did it, it reveals a few different things, but it reveals that maybe Trump wasn't as unpopular as people thought. It also revealed that the country is still very much divided. It reveals that at some point, something's got to give here, because it was a very, what's the word I want to use? There was a lot of political pugilism going on this past election season, a lot of fighting. We're at each other's throats, accusations being thrown back and forth. I mean, you guys know what our political discourse is like right now, unfortunately. And as much as people want to blame it on Trump, it's not Trump's fault. Trump is the result of that. I'm not saying that he helps calm it down. He doesn't. He adds to it. I mean, I'll say that. But this stuff was coming long before Trump. As a matter of fact, it's the reason that Trump ever got elected. So I'm going to get started here. Let me pull up the article. Let's see. Come on. Here we go. All right. So this is the article, and I think I already put the link to it in the show notes if you want to bring it up yourself, but I'll be scrolling through it too. So the secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. Now, even just before I even get into this shadow campaign, that sounds like some Alex Jones type stuff, doesn't it? That sounds like some right-wing conspiracy type stuff, doesn't it? But it's true. And the good thing about this is that now they can't really deny it. So anyway, it starts out, and let's see. I'm not going to go through the whole article. I'm just going to take some bits and pieces from it because, like I said, it is a very long article, and we'll be here all night if I go through every single passage. But it starts out introducing or setting the stage. It talks about how this cabal, this group, I'm not going to call it an organization because it's not like an official organization, but it is made up of organizations and individuals. And it says that there was a conspiracy unfolding behind the scenes, one that both curtailed the protest and coordinated the resistance from CEOs. So members of the business community in industry, they were in on this too for various reasons. And the Chamber of Commerce as well. As you see here, the pact was formalized in a terse, little notice joint statement of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the AFL-CIO. Now, when they say that politics makes strange bedfellows, this is what they're talking about. The notion that the Chamber of Commerce and their arch nemesis, the AFL-CIO, were partnering together, that's like Superman and Lex Luthor getting together to take on some stuff, which actually I think that happened in the comics. But still, but I digress, as Lenny McAllister would say. So here's the first passage that I really want to highlight. The handshake between business and labor was just one component of a vast cross-partisan, supposedly, cross-partisan campaign to protect the election. An extraordinary shadow effort dedicated not to winning the vote, but to ensuring it would be free and fair, credible, and uncorrupted. Now, I want to focus on that because what stands out to you about that? First, the fact that it's complete bullshit. Yes, of course they were collaborating together to make sure that Biden won. I'll be hitting this point all throughout this presentation. But I want you to watch the framing, how they frame this, and you're going to see this throughout the article. So I want you to be aware of it. The author frames the story as this noble, valiant effort to protect the integrity of our elections. Now, I believe that there are at least some people who were involved in this who actually did have that intention. And I'll say it's people on the left and the right. So that's why I say when I bring the conservatives into play here, I do think that they were involved, but not all of them were necessarily never Trumpers. I think a lot of these people just wanted the election to go the right way, even if Trump did win. However, I don't think that applies to most of the people that were involved in this. I mean, this was, like I said, this was spearheaded by progressives, which the article mentions. And I mean, if you want to tell me that these progressives would have been okay if Trump won, then you might as well try to sell me a bridge too, because I'm not going to believe that either. I mean, it's obvious what was going on here. So the article continues. Let me go down here. It says, for more than a year, a loosely organized coalition of operatives scrambled to shore up America's institutions as they came under simultaneous attack from a remorseless pandemic and an autocratically inclined president, Hitler. Though much of this activity took place on the left, it was separate from the Biden campaign and cross-ideological line. Okay, I can't keep it straight. Yeah, of course. It was separate from the Biden campaign and cross-ideological lines with crucial contributions by nonpartisan and conservative actors. So again, you can see how they're already trying to frame this because they know the first thing that we're going to think, that this was mostly run by progressives, which it was. And it may have been separate from the Biden campaign technically, but if you kind of know what happened here, you know that it's not, because there were instances of these people actually working with Biden or having the Biden campaign pressure them into doing certain things. By the way, it doesn't just include the Chamber of Commerce, the AFL-CIO. It includes major corporations. It includes big tech, social media. It includes politicians at the local, state, and federal level. And the scenario here is they were focused on doing a number of things to, quote unquote, preserve the integrity of the election. So the media was trying to crack down on misinformation, or trying to give America the real story, or to put it the way it really is, propagandizing the American public to vote for Biden. You had social media companies cracking down on misinformation, supposedly. And then you had local and, again, state level politicians who changed election laws ostensibly because of the coronavirus pandemic to make it easier to vote by mail. So So the article does continue. It says, let's see, the scenario. Yeah. It says the scenario the shadow campaigners were desperate to stop was not a Trump victory. It was an election so calamitous that no result could be discerned at all. A failure of the central act of democratic self-governance that has been a hallmark of America since its founding. Again, they're laying it on thick here. They're really trying to make it, they're really trying to sell the idea that this was not about unseating Trump. But again, we saw what happened. Everything that they did was against Trump and for Biden. Let's see. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit here. Okay. So again, the author of the article, what was her name? Molly something. Molly Ball. So the author of the article, she's framing this as an attempt to ensure that the election was free and fair. and to protect democracy. And if you notice, they were setting this up. When you hear those terms, like they're trying to preserve democracy because Trump is supposedly attacking democracy, there's a reason why the activist media was framing it this way over the past couple of years. When you read this, you can kind of remember back, like, oh yeah, I do remember them using that phrasing, trying to position it like Trump was attacking democracy, even though he wasn't. I mean, disputing the results of an election, whether you agree with him or not, that's not attacking democracy. Democrats have done it in the past. Republicans have done it in the past, and nobody has pretended that it was an attack on democracy. But one thing that you're also going to notice here, and one thing that I predicted even before election night, but also on election night, if you watched the Hotep's election show, I predicted that no matter who won, the other side was going to contest the election. If Trump had won, the left was going to contest the election. They were going to say that Trump somehow subverted the democratic process. They were probably going to go with foreign influence. They definitely were going to go with voter suppression as well. So no matter who won, it was going to be so close that the other side was going to contest it. In the article, it says the president spent months insisting that mail ballots were a Democratic plot, and the election would be rigged. And then the article says his henchmen at the state level sought to block their use, while his lawyers brought dozens of spurious suits to make it more difficult to vote. Now, I was hearing whispers of that, but here in the article, every time they accuse Trump of trying to subvert the democratic process before the election, they don't really give any examples. She doesn't include any links. She doesn't quote any other news sources. She just makes the statement because she knows that the audience of Time Magazine is just going to accept what they're saying, right? So I want to go to what I think is the most dangerous paragraph here. Let me just do it this way. Okay. It says, that's why the participants want the secret history of the 2020 election told, even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream. A well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. They were not rigging the election, they were fortifying it. And they believe the public needs to understand the system's fragility in order to ensure that democracy in America endures. This is the confession. This is the admission of what they are doing. And they're saying the quiet part out loud. This is what they've been doing for years, even before Trump. This is what they always did. It's just that with Trump, now they're feeling bold enough to admit it to us. They're not afraid to tell us that they did this. It blows my mind. Even before I read the article and I heard that Time Magazine published an article talking about this, I was shocked because they had spent so much time pretending that they weren't doing this, pretending that conservatives were crazy conspiracy theorists for even suggesting that, for instance, that the media, that they would steer media coverage and control the flow of information. And again, the author tries to frame this as fortifying it. They were not rigging the election, they were fortifying it. So obviously the author of this piece knows what she is suggesting by writing what she just wrote here, because she knows how that's going to come off. So she's going to keep trying to persuade you throughout this article that this was not about rigging the election or influencing the election so that Biden would win. But if you look carefully, if you recall how these entities acted, especially the media and especially social media, there was nothing there that would suggest that they were just trying to make sure that the election went the right way. They were clearly trying to swing it in Biden's favor. If they were actually trying to protect the integrity of the election, they would have done so in a way that there couldn't have been much debate on it. And yet you still had all these irregularities. Again, I'm not saying the election was stolen. You guys know how I feel about that. But what I am saying is that there were definitely irregularities and there were definitely signs of fraud involved in the process. If they were really doing what they say they were doing, we wouldn't have seen a whole lot of that at all. So let's continue. So now the author introduces a man named Mike Podhorzer, or however you pronounce that. Mike P. I'm just going to call him Mikey P. All right. So Mikey P, back in 2019, kind of got an inkling that the election was headed for disaster, and he was determined to protect it. Again, persuasion here. They're persuading you. And it goes on to talk about how he worked behind the scenes to form this alliance. And this guy's got skills. I got to give it to him. I mean, I wish Mikey P were on our side, but he got together all of these different institutions, all of these different people, and they would hold weekly Zoom meetings, sometimes even more than weekly, sometimes with 100 people, 200 people, sometimes with less. But this was all behind the scenes. And they would get together and they would look at the trends. They would look at the polling. They had input from a variety of different professionals, political consultants, and others. And they would get together and they would figure out how to influence the election. Although they would say that they were talking about how to stop Trump's attempt to destroy American democracy. Which again, that only persuades people who already believe it. Nobody actually believes that Trump is going to destroy our democracy. That's a foolish idea. Let's see. So this was another paragraph I wanted to highlight. Let me scroll down. This part just goes through how he got all these people together to fight the evil, vicious dictator. He says he spent months pondering scenarios and talking to experts. It wasn't hard to find liberals who saw Trump as a dangerous dictator, but Mikey P was careful to steer clear of hysteria. Yeah, right. Okay. But again, you can kind of see that this kind of explains the beginning of this whole collaboration. Or maybe I'll just call it collusion, because they like that word. It was a collusion. Now, they did note that Trump had been talking about how this election wouldn't be fair because of mail-in ballots and other issues. Because remember, I told you, both sides were preparing their case for contesting the election. Both sides were priming us for what they were going to do after November 3rd. Trump was doing the exact same thing. Whether you agree with it or not, that's up to you. But I mean, Trump was using his persuasion too. Now, here's where I think he made a mistake, though. I mean, Trump has, as you know, Trump has very top-notch persuasion skills. He knows how to move people, whether you like him or not. You have to admit, he knows how to persuade people. And he persuaded his people not to vote by mail, but to show up in person, which makes sense. But I think his mistake was in coming out so hard against mail-in ballots. And I know I'm going to get some pushback on this, but I know that there were potential issues with mail-in ballots, especially with states who had to figure out how to do it during a pandemic because they hadn't done it that way before. But most of those mail-in votes went to Democrats. I think that Trump would have been better served if he actually joined in with that and said and encouraged his followers to vote by mail if they're not able to make it to the post office. And here's why. I mean, obviously, the majority, I mean, a lot of people turned out for Trump in person, which is fine. They voted early or they voted on election day. But what about the people who didn't do mail-in voting, maybe because Trump talked them out of it, but they also couldn't make it to the polls either because of work or because they had underlying conditions and they didn't want to have to worry about catching COVID-19. And here's kind of where I'm going to hit on a sticking issue. Not everybody who supported Trump bought into the fantasy that COVID-19 was just like the flu. Also, senior voters were more likely to vote for Trump. He got the senior vote. Now, I haven't looked at the numbers to see if there were fewer seniors or fewer or more seniors that voted this time rather than 2016. But is it possible that there were a lot of seniors who didn't vote by mail because they were convinced that it was going to be fraudulent, but they also didn't show up at the polls because they might have been concerned about catching COVID-19? Now, I know the survival rate, 90% survival rate or whatever, but just even if you know that you're going to survive it, that doesn't mean that you want to get it, right? And if you're elderly, the survival rate goes down. So it may seem like that might be a small number of people. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But remember, in those battleground states, Biden didn't win by a whole heck of a lot. Like, this was not a blowout. He won by very thin margins in each of those battleground states. So if he had convinced people to vote for him by mail, I think that this might have gone a different way. I could be wrong. I mean, we'll never know. But Trump was so busy saying that this was going to be fraudulent, he was already preparing people to believe that no matter what happened. The Democrats seized on that. Instead of being silent on it, they were very loudly launching a very, very comprehensive persuasion campaign to encourage people to vote by mail. And that's why we saw a lot of these record numbers, because people voted by mail. And while there were irregularities, like I've said before, I'm not convinced that there was enough fraudulent votes to give Biden the election. So I think that the mail-in votes really hurt Trump, and I think it was a strategic mistake to talk his supporters out of voting by mail. I'm sure, I mean, we know that a lot of people did vote for him by mail, but still, it could have been more. So that's just my little 2 cents on that part of it. But again, you can kind of see where this cabal is coming from, or where they say they're coming from. They think he's going to somehow steal the election himself by arguing that it was fraudulent or whatever, which he did challenge. But I mean, they haven't proven that those challenges weren't valid. As a matter of fact, we'll never know because the courts never heard them. I know a lot of them were BS. I mean, I'm just going to say that. I mean, a lot of them were BS, but not all of them. I mean, you can't have almost 200 sworn affidavits sworn under penalty of perjury and over 2,000 incident reports and tell me that this thing was squeaky clean. It wasn't. Anyway, but I digress. So the author continues. Let's see. I'll go by here. I'm going to skip past this part because it's not that important. And again, I don't want to read this whole thing. So we're going to skip to where we talk about alleged disinformation. Now, the article says, bad actors spreading false information is nothing new. For decades, campaigns have grappled with it, with everything from anonymous calls claiming the election has been rescheduled to flyers spreading nasty smears about candidates' families, yada, yada, yada. But Trump's lies and conspiracy theories, the viral force of social media, and the involvement of foreign meddlers made disinformation a broader, deeper threat to the 2020 vote. This was the excuse they were going to use if Trump had won. This is one of the excuses that they were going to use. Again, I remember hearing about this back then. They were priming us. But now they're using it as an excuse to have formed this huge coalition to go against Trump. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that Trump is honest all the time. We know he's not. He's a politician. He lies. I don't care. I mean, I do care, but I mean, you're not going to convince me that his lies were somehow worse than everybody else's. And no, I don't believe that he told 13,000 lies or whatever it is the Washington Post says. They lie too. So we're being lied to no matter where we go. It's the activist media. They're lying to us. Republicans lie to us. Democrats lie to us. They're all lying. So we have to figure out ways to discover the truth underneath those lies. But when it talks about Laura Quinn, which was interesting because she was one of the people who was basically spearheading the movement to crack down on disinformation, which again just means anything that they don't agree with. And we saw that happen on social media. It goes on to say that Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, he had supposed civil rights leaders over at his house. He had leftists over at his house for dinner to talk about cracking down on disinformation. Now, I wrote an article a while ago talking about how the Biden campaign was trying to pressure Facebook to remove ads done by the Trump campaign saying that they were disinformation. Now, remember earlier in the article when they said that this whole coalition wasn't involved with the Biden campaign? Well, they were definitely working in tandem. They were working in a way that was parallel to one another. And here's the thing, Facebook did take down a lot of that material. I don't know if they took down a lot of Trump's ads, but you know, when it comes to censorship, they censor conservatives. Now, Biden campaign was saying that Trump's ads were false, but then they were running ads that still promoted the fine people hoax, right? The one where Trump supposedly said that Nazis were very fine people, which he never said. As a matter of fact, in that same sentence or in that same paragraph that he was saying, he specifically said he's not talking about the neo-Nazis and white supremacists when he used the words fine people. He said that very clearly. So anybody who promotes that hoax, They're either willingly lying or they're believing lies. In Biden's case, in his campaign's case, they knew he didn't say that. They were lying. Did Facebook take that down? No. That's even been debunked by CNN. CNN has debunked that lie. That's how brazen it is. You know that you're telling a lie when MSNBC or CNN or outlets like that, when they debunk it. So we also saw what they did with the New York Post, right? The story about Hunter Biden that came out in October. Now, that was a factual story. That wasn't fake news. There was nothing fake there. You saw what Twitter did with it, and they were hauled in front of Congress so they can get a stern lecture and a stern talking to, and be told to never ever do that again. But still, Twitter censored it. Facebook throttled it too. They did not want that story getting out. So again, you can't claim that you're trying to protect democracy or trying to protect the election process or ensure free and fair elections when you're only cracking down on one side. That's an agenda. That's not trying to safeguard our institutions. That's trying to get Biden elected. And here's the thing. I mean, and I'll go into more of this later. I wouldn't be that mad at it if they were honest about it, because this stuff has happened for decades, really since the country's inception. So let's see. Is there any part there that I wanted to cover? Yeah, so I talked about Zuckerberg bringing in people on the left to talk about cracking down on misinformation. By the way, what do you think would happen if Mark Zuckerberg brought Trump supporters into his home to discuss cracking down on misinformation and left-wing fake news? Yeah, exactly. So let's take a look. I'm going to take a look at some chats here before I go on. Let me go back up here. Let's see. Oh, Wendy, you brought up a really good point. The bad news is they feel confident enough to rub our noses in it. It's like you're reading my mind. I wrote an article about this that came out today, and I'll get to that in a second, but you're onto something. Let's see. Oh, well, let me take that off. Yeah, but France, Trump saw it coming. Yeah, he did. You know, a lot of times I think that Trump just talks out of his ass. I do think that. But there are times when I think he's actually onto something. He knew this was going on. He could see it. Now, Marlene, I think you're right, too. I think he saw it coming, but I don't think he realized how extensive it was. I don't think he knew how deep this went. And how could he? I mean, he's busy. He was busy running the country. He was busy running his own campaign. Oh, yada, yada, yada. Let's see. Yeah, people are saying they knew, but what did people do? I'm going to talk about that a little bit too. Let's see. So Felicia, back when I was talking about the strategy as far as mail-in ballots, I was thinking about you when we were talking about that. He should not have persuaded his supporters not to vote by mail. I mean, I think in general, people should show up to the polls to vote. I'm okay with voting early, but in this case, it could have cost him the election. So yeah, he should have rallied on the ground. And this article actually goes into a lot of that. It goes into, for instance, it goes into how when the polls were open for early voting, Democrats were on the ground in these battleground states. They were having cookouts. They were making it fun for people to show up, even if they had to wait. But they were also doing things like making sure that people didn't have to wait too long in most cases, which I'm all fine with that. But they were very strategic. They were playing chess. You had Stacey Abrams down there in Georgia whipping up those votes, registering almost 1 million people. So, here we are. We're making fun of her weight. We're making fun of the way she looks. And while we're making fun of her, she was on the ground kicking our asses. So we need to learn from that. And I think some people have. I mean, you look at Scott Presser. He says he wants to become the Stacey Abrams of the right. He's got the right idea. I don't agree with him about Chip Roy, but he's got the right idea. Let's see. Well, and that's the ultimate question, Steve. Why do we allow them to play us like this? Well, but here's the thing. They really didn't play us. We knew they were doing this, right? You knew they were doing it, Steve. I knew they were doing it. Our elected officials knew they were doing it. So why didn't they do anything? The conservative movement, the higher ups, the leaders, the pundits, they knew it. What were they doing about it? Let's see. Again, yeah, you got the right idea. They think that they've gotten away with what they did. Very bold, very bold, very bold. Yes. Let's see. What else we got here? See, and that's what I think is so amazing. Biden won by a very thin margin, and so did Ossoff and Warnock. So if you look at all the time and money that was dedicated to this operation that this collusion was doing, and they still barely won, that says a lot to me. Let's see. Yeah, yeah. So Felicia, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I was actually thinking about this before I did this video. So the thing is that when we promoted the whole, let me just back up. Trump promoted the idea that it was going to be fraudulent because of mail-in ballots. He was already priming us for that. Then the election happened, and there were irregularities, and people were saying the election was stolen. And guess what that did? That encouraged people to not show up. I think that the number was about 500,000 people that would have normally shown up didn't. And I'm talking Republicans, not Democrat voters. If those people would have shown up, the Republicans would still control the Senate. And the interesting about that point is that is actually mentioned in the article. Let's see if I can find it really quick. Where'd it go? I think it's in this section here. Oh, wait, I'm doing on the wrong screen here. This was a very interesting part. Okay. No. Anyway, the lady who was responsible for disinformation basically said that they didn't want to harp on the idea that the election could be stolen by Trump, because if they would have sent that messaging out, because remember, they were kind of talking about that near the early the early phases of this presidential election season. They were talking about how Trump would try to use fraud to steal the election or voter suppression or what have you. They changed their messaging on that because Laura Quinn did a study and found out that if people were persuaded that the election was going to be stolen or that there was going to be voter suppression or fraud, they were less likely to show up to vote. That's what happened in Georgia. But the Democrats were on that from the beginning. They knew that promoting the narrative that it was going to be stolen or that it was going to be fraudulent was going to damage their turnout. So they stopped messaging on it as strong. And when I read that, I remember, yeah, that's true. They were doing that at first, and then they kind of eased back off of it. They were still saying it, but they eased back off of it. Again, they were playing chess. We were playing checkers. So let's see here. Yeah, this definitely played a part. With people working from home, consuming more media than ever, they were convinced of the narrative. And you know what? The Democrats' persuasion game was better than ours. I mean, even Trump's campaigning wasn't as good as he was in 2016. And I mean, I was talking about that with Magdalene Rose. I mean, in 2016, he was on point. 2020, not so much. But it wasn't just, I mean, that wasn't the only cause of it, but I mean, it's still worth pointing out. Let's see. Yes, this right here, our side should learn from the left and give them a taste of their own medicine, use their tactics against them. Some of you guys, I think it's like, you know how I think, so you know what I'm going to say. You're in my head. But let's continue. Let's see, what are the points that I want to hit here? So, yeah. So another part of their persuasion campaign was to convince people to become comfortable with mail-in ballots. And I'm sure you all remember that. They were talking about how mail-in ballots were great and absolutely no problems. It's wonderful if you vote by mail, all of your wildest dreams will come true. You'll get rich, you'll be a millionaire, all this stuff. They really pushed that hard because, quote, studies have shown that when people don't think their vote will count or fear casting it will be a hassle, they're far less likely to participate. So that was a part of the article that I wanted to talk about. But they really did a lot to ease people's concerns. And again, they were all planning this. It wasn't in a dark, smoke-filled room. It was on Zoom conferences. So I covered that part already. So again, now when we're talking about the conservatives who were involved in this, I'm sure there were tons of never Trumpers, right? You had the Lincoln losers. You had those people, Steve Schmidt, Rick Wilson, Michael Steele, beclowning themselves as they are wont to do. But their persuasion efforts. I lost my train of thought. Let me go back here. Yes. So the conservatives who were involved with this, we look at the Chamber of Commerce. Now they normally side with businesses, right? Now some of the people in the Chamber of Commerce and some business leaders were concerned that if the election appeared to be fraudulent, that there would be more riots. Like say if Trump had won and it looked like there was voter suppression or whatever narrative the media would spin, that there would be more riots and protests. And as a matter of fact, this article even says people were already ready to protest. They already had this organized. This group had protests organized just in case they lost. And it was close enough to where they could promote a voter suppression narrative or a voter fraud narrative or a Trump is Hitler narrative. And they were ready to protest. Now, these are ostensibly supposed to be peaceful protesters, but we know it would have broken out in riots. I mean, the riots at the Capitol would have looked like they would have looked very tame compared to what would have happened if Trump had won. I think that they would still be rioting right now. So the Chamber of Commerce, since they represent small businesses, they were obviously concerned about this, which I would be too. So that's fine. But what's the real reason why the Chamber of Commerce would have participated in this and wanted Trump out? I'm sure you can already guess. Why would the Chamber of Commerce want Trump out of office? Let's see if anybody guesses. Y'all don't know, really? You guys know. It's immigration. Chamber of Commerce loves illegal immigration. They love immigration, as much immigration as they can possibly get. As a matter of fact, when Biden announced his plan to grant a pathway to citizenship for 11 million illegals, they cheered it. They loved it. So when I talk about conservatives being involved in it, some of these people had their own ulterior motives. Now, there was one organization in general, and I can't remember what it was called, but I think this one was really a bipartisan effort to ensure election safety. It had actual Trump supporters in it who wanted Trump to win. So like I said, not everybody who was involved in this had a political agenda, but I think most of them did. So I'm just going to skip through here because a lot of stuff is just more details. Let's see. I don't really need to cover it, but I mean, I won't go too much longer about this. I mean, you should definitely read the article if you haven't already. I would definitely encourage you to read it. It is very eye-opening. It is very telling. And now I want to get to the meat of this. So first off, does this whole collaboration, does this constitute rigging the election? Does this mean that the election was fixed or rigged? Stolen? No, it doesn't. And here's why. From what I've seen, that these people engaged in anything that was illegal. Now, we need to set aside the people who changed the laws as far as voting goes and how that was going to be tabulated, because that's in question as to whether it was constitutional or not. And if you wanted to make the argument that changing those laws would have been engaging in some type of rigging, you can make that argument. I haven't delved too much into that because I don't know that much about it. But if we put that to the side, everything else here is legal. You are allowed to persuade the populace to vote for the candidate that you want. We do it all the time. And like I said, this has been going on since the beginning of the nation. You've always had people who have certain interests push for certain candidates and use their platforms and their money, their time, resources, their capital to get the result that they desire. So my question is, why the hell weren't we doing this? And you might say, oh, well, we don't have control of the media. No, but conservatives still have influence, right? I mean, sometimes I think we make the left sound like they're more powerful than they are. We portray them as this huge leviathan that just controls everything. Yeah, they control a lot, but they don't control everything. If that were true, they wouldn't be trying to censor us on social media. They wouldn't care. No, conservatives have reach. We have reach in different ways. But we do have reach. We have reach on talk radio. We have reach through YouTube, like I'm doing right now. We have reach on social media. We have reach through websites. The left can't shut everything down. They wish they could. They want to, but they can't. We have always found a way to still subvert their efforts and to go around them. So why weren't we doing this? There are business owners that love Trump. There are nonprofit organizations. There are media organizations that supported Trump. Where was our persuasion efforts? And that's the question that we really need to answer over the next 2 to 4 years. We need to figure out how to mobilize in the way that the Democrats did. Where's our Stacey Abrams? I mentioned that earlier. Scott Presler. The GOP needs to give Scott Presler whatever he needs to do what he needs to do. I may not agree with everything that he says, but the man is serious about what he does. We need more of him. But the question is, why don't we have more? Why isn't the conservative movement the type of movement that can inspire more people like him? And maybe there are more and we just don't hear about them, but I doubt it. We need to have a political machine that is as comprehensive but as clever as the Democrats. Now I'm not saying that we need to get as dirty as a lot of people on the left do. We don't need to do all that. I mean, if you read the Bible, you know, it says to be as clever as serpents and be as innocent as doves. We can do that. And I see no reason why we couldn't. So that's something to think about. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Even after this, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we can counter that machine, because what we need to realize is that they're not done. They're going to do this again. They're already doing it again. As a matter of fact, the article even says that they haven't stopped at this election. They're going to try to do it for the midterms. I don't think that they'll be able to win the midterms with the way they're acting right now, but still, there will be future elections and they're still going to do it. I also want to reiterate the fact that these people were not working to save democracy. They were not trying to safeguard the integrity of the election. They were not trying to fortify the election. These people are nothing more than partisan hacks who were looking to make sure that their guy got elected, plain and simple. I don't believe anything that they're selling on this. But then the question is, that I asked in my article today, why would Time magazine allow this article to be written? Why would the people that they interviewed for the article want it to come out? The author clearly says in the article that the people involved in this wanted this story to be told. Why? Why would they want this? Why? I mean, they could still be sitting back calling us a bunch of conspiracy nuts who don't know what we're talking about, who just make stuff up. They can loop QAnon into it and paint us all as QAnon people. Why would they expose themselves this way? Because I will tell you right now, myself and every other conservative commentator is going to be using this against them. It's already started. They can't deny it anymore because they admitted it. Even though they try to frame it in a way that isn't true, most people are going to see through that. It's obvious what they were doing. I think, here's my theory, in my opinion, they got cocky. They are very cocky right now. They are very self-assured, and you can see it in their actions. A Democrat Party that isn't cocky wouldn't be trying to impeach President Trump after he's already out of office. They definitely wouldn't be trying to push to impeach him after he's out of office based on lies, based on a foundation that has already been debunked. House Democrats wouldn't have voted to remove Marjorie Taylor Greene from her committee assignments. And you guys know how I feel about Marjorie Taylor Greene. She is our AOC. I can't stand her. I don't There's nothing about her that I really like. But if she was going to be stripped of those assignments, it should have been done by Republicans, not by Democrats. That's not how it usually happens. They are so blinded by their arrogance right now that they don't even see that once the GOP gets the House back, who's going to be on the chopping block now? They better be ready to say goodbye to Ilhan Omar, because the Republicans will do the exact same thing. And it won't matter that her anti-Semitic remarks were made 4 or 5 years prior. You guys removed MTG because she said anti-Semitic and said a lot of really stupid shit. And you really expected us not to do anything about that? It's the same mistake that Harry Reid made in 2013 when he got rid of the filibuster. Well, he opened that door and Mitch McConnell stepped through it years later. The same thing is going to happen. So to me, I can't think of any other reason why they would do these things when they know it's going to come back to bite them. The only thing I can think of is that they think that they're in a position to where they're basically untouchable. So they can think that they're rubbing our faces in it, like saying, yeah, okay, we built a huge coalition. The media behaved unethically because they didn't practice journalism. They practiced activism. We got social media companies to crack down on conservatives. What are you going to do about it? That's why they did it, in my opinion. I can't think of any other reason. They're not doing it because they want to be honest. I mean, they're not honest people. They lie all the time. Time Magazine has lied about Trump billions of times. So I think that that's the reason why they think that they can admit this and that nothing will happen to them. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say about it. That was my 2 cents on this whole thing. But let me know what you think in the chat. Do you have any questions? Let's see. Let me go back up here. Get a little sip of water here. My throat's getting dry. Okay. Okay. Yes, Wendy, you're right. I've been seeing Black Democrats pissed on Twitter too. They're all up my ass when I was talking about how Biden's not doing this and Biden's not doing that. But I think a lot of them aren't very happy, and they're not using the whole "it's too soon to criticize him" excuse. I think we're going to see more of this. But he is going to meet with Ice Cube, supposedly. So better late than never, I guess. We'll see what happens or what doesn't happen. Let's see. Republicans love losing. It kind of seems like that, doesn't it? Yeah. All right, sis. Now ask what blueprint conservatives have that can compete against this tactic now that Trump, the bulldog, is gone. That's the question. That is the million-dollar question that we need to answer, and we need to start answering it now. And notice that, like, Felicia didn't say what blueprint Trump has, even though he's gone, because Trump is still going to be active. What do conservatives have that's going to compete against this tactic? How are we going to subvert this? We have figured out how to get around the left before. We have figured out how to subvert the left before. We can do it again. We need to have leaders who are willing to do what needs to be done. And I mean that in a totally non-violent way. I'm not inciting violence. I didn't use the word fight once in this article, in this video, except for just now. But that wasn't inciting violence. Let's see. What else we got here? Yeah, you missed everything, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. You shouldn't have taken that call, Wendy. Yeah, some conservatives need to stop with the talking points. Too many conservatives need to stop with the talking points. Yep, that's true. Let's see. Felicia, Sonny, Scott, and a bunch of other conservatives know but aren't mainstream or are ignored. That's true, but I think that's going to change. I really do think that's going to change. And I'm not even saying it's going to change because the gatekeepers are going to stop gatekeeping. That might happen. Hopefully it does. But even if they still continue gatekeeping, we have ways to get our voices out there. So I think that we're going to see a change in the Republican Party. I was on a panel earlier this week talking about, because one of the topics was, is this the end of the GOP? And I think it is the end of the GOP as we know it. The Republican Party isn't going anywhere, at least not yet, but it is going to change. And I don't think it's all going to be all about Trump either. I think that there's a metamorphosis that's going on right now that needs to happen. Let's see. So this is an interesting point. Our reach wasn't enough. The left's influence was helped by big tech and big media. You know, you're right about that. I don't disagree with a single word of that, but you have to remember that that's always been the case. Trump still won in 2016. George W. Bush won. We still get people elected at the local and state and federal level. So there are ways to get around that influence. Like I said, the left isn't all powerful. I wouldn't even say that this is a David and Goliath situation. They do have a definite advantage in a lot of areas, but I think now is the time to come up with novel solutions. We can't rely on the same solutions that we did before. We have to come up with something new to get around what they're doing with their censorship and all that jazz. By aggressively turning the other cheek, Wendy, are you inciting violence? No violence. I know you like to throat punch people. Let's see. Okay, so where is it? Okay. Yep. The right conceded that to the left for being spineless. Many of us are trying to rectify that now. Yeah, there are people out there doing it. So I think we'll if we play our cards right, we'll be fine. Let's see. You know what, Felicia? Don't worry about my water jug, okay? I get thirsty and I need a lot of water, and I get tired of filling it up over and over again. So if I have a big one, I don't have to fill it up as often. Gosh. And you have some nerve after spoiling WandaVision for me yesterday. I'm not forgiving you for that. What else we got here? Why hasn't Biden given Stacey Abrams a job? Are they saving her to run against Kemp? That's possible, but something tells me that they want Stacey doing what she's doing. She's doing I hate to say it, but she's doing an excellent job with her strategy. And here's the thing. They've already said that they're not stopping with Georgia. They're going to other southern states, probably Texas too, where I am. They're going to try to replicate that. That's yet another issue that we're going to have to be able to answer. And that's not going to be done by people who are only involved in leadership for clout. That's not going to be accomplished through political theater. Hotep sent you? Why? R2D let's see. Yeah. The left changed their party over the years. Conservatives must do the same thing. The party needs a huge overhaul. Yeah, it's needed an overhaul for a long time, and I think it's happening. But I mean, the establishment is still going to hold on to whatever power they have. I mean, they're going to try to hold on to whatever power they have, but it's going to be up to people like us who aren't part of the establishment who are willing to fight that. Let's see. Anybody else got any questions or comments? Anything you want to say? Yes, no grifters allowed. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's grifting season, so we're always going to have grifters around. But we can always be louder than them. We can always be more persuasive than them. We can always be the adults in the room. If they want to grift, then they can grift. Although it's going to be harder to grift without Trump. I mean, they're still going to try, but I mean, that's at least a silver lining that the grifters are going to have a harder time grifting. But when it comes to, I will say that when it comes to black outreach, I don't think that that's going to slow down a whole heck of a lot. Although I do notice that Blex has been a little silent, but still, I mean, that grift has been going on since before Black Conservative Inc. of today. Let's This is a good question. Do you think the Lincoln Project will have any place? No. Nope, they won't. They're done. Especially after the scandal that they just had. No, they're done. The left doesn't want them. And I think they were banking on that. I mean, Steve Schmidt changed his party affiliation to Democrat. Like they really want his ass. Like, no, they're done. You know, and after the John Weaver scandal, and you know, I haven't looked into that too much, but I mean, it sounds pretty bad. I mean, what he did was horrible, and it doesn't sound like these people did much about it. And it sounds like some of them knew that he had some issues in this direction. So I don't think that the Michael Steeles are going to have any influence. I think the ones that we have to look out for are like the Liz Cheneys, and some of the others that are more coming from the Bush days. We got to watch out for them. And with Liz Cheney, I mean, I want her to get voted out. I mean, I don't have a problem with what Matt Gaetz is doing, trying to persuade her voters to get her out. She's not representing her constituents because, I mean, if you look at the polling, it's in the toilet now. And here's the thing. Even if she hadn't voted to impeach Trump, and I've said this before, even if she hadn't voted to impeach Trump, I would still want her out of there. She's a neocon. I want an end to unnecessary wars. I don't want to go back to the establishment days. The establishment is one of the reasons why the GOP loses the black vote. So, I mean, they had a good run. They had their turn. Now it's time for them to go away. What else we got here? All right. This is an interesting point. I don't buy the purple Texas BS. Demographics have always been what they are. I don't think it's purple right now. Texas isn't purple right now, but I mean, I could see it happening. And especially if our state GOP and our local GOP chapters aren't ready for it. And if they get overconfident like the Democrats are right now, it will happen. So hopefully they see the danger there and they're willing to fight back. I was hoping to avoid this. I know that she talked about running for office, but I'm blocked by her and I like it that way. So I didn't see her announcement, but I heard others talking about it. I was thinking she was trying to run for some type of Congress seat. She's trying to run for president. Is that what's going on? Let me know in the chat. Is Candace Owens trying to run for president? Let's see. What happens if Jesse Ventura becomes president? How old is that guy? I'm going to look. Jesse Ventura. 69. Oh, he's not that old. Okay. Yeah, he could do it. Hopefully he doesn't. I'd rather have Ric Flair. Let's see. This is a good question. Oh, wait, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Okay. Is the future of the GOP more MTG or Liz Cheney? See, the fact that you even know to put the initials MTG instead of Marjorie Taylor Greene, that just lets me further know how what she is here for. She is our AOC. Now, do I think that she's the future? God, I hope not. But I don't want Liz Cheney either. I think that what'll happen is if the non-establishment people, the sane non-establishment faction of the Republican Party ends up winning out, then neither of these people will be the future of the party. You know, it's not just MTG. I know I talk about her a lot because she has said a lot of stupid shit and she said some bigoted stuff. But and you know, her apology I didn't think was real. I mean, I'm sure she's sorry about some of the stuff she said, but you can tell by the words that she uses that she's not really remorseful for it. Now, I know that she did give a press conference after that, so I haven't checked that out, so maybe she did apologize. But either way, I mean, she's not the way we need to go. I know people like her because she owns the libs, but really, from what I've seen of her so far, all she is political theater. She's not going to come up with any kind of meaningful legislation. She's not going to champion any kind of meaningful bills. She's there to get attention and to put on a show, as evidenced by the fact that when she took office, she filed articles of impeachment against Joe Biden. Now, she knew that wasn't going to go anywhere. Nobody's going to take it that seriously, Republican or Democrat. He hasn't done anything worthy of impeachment, at least not that I know of. And I know she doesn't know anything that he's done that deserves impeachment. She did it because she wants that attention, because she wants people to say, hey, look, I'm trying to impeach Joe Biden. Here's my thing. If I see that the Democrats are being stupid because they're trying to remove Trump from office after he's already out of office for something that he didn't do, and it's going to fail, and I do think it's going to redound negatively on them in the future, it's going to help them lose in 2022, why the hell would I want us to do the exact same thing? This is where that hashtag comes in. I'm telling you, I'm going to make this a thing. We had Stop the Steal. My hashtag, it's going to be hashtag Stop the Stupid. And when I say that, I'm talking about people like MTG. When you're filing articles of impeachment against Biden for no good reason, knowing it's not going to go anywhere, that's where we need to hashtag Stop the Stupid. Say it with me now. What else we got here? Okay. Do we have anything else? Any other questions? Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I think I'm gonna sign off here. But definitely be doing more of these. Let me know if you have any other questions, or if you want to continue this conversation, we can do so on Twitter. But again, please share this. Please share this. That's going to help me out a lot. I'm halfway to where I need to be as far as subscribers go, and as far as hours go, as far as people watching my content. I'm halfway to where I need to be in order to monetize this. So I would really appreciate your support. Please subscribe and please share this as much as you can. I would really appreciate it. It's going to help me out a lot, especially since I'm doing content full time now. So hook a brother up. Help me out. You know what? I'll do this really quick. My thoughts on Ben Sasse. You know, I don't really have many thoughts on him. I mean, I know he's an anti-Trump kind of guy. I don't really care. I don't really judge somebody based on how they feel about Trump. I mean, if you don't like Trump, fine. I'm more concerned about what your principles are as far as doing your job, as far as being a legislator. And as far as I know, I don't know that Ben Sasse has supported any type of policy that I wouldn't approve of. But I mean, he might be another one of the people that ends up getting voted out. And I hate to say it, but they'll probably do it just because of his stance on Trump. But again, there could be more to him that I don't know about. So, I mean, I may change my position later on. Let's see. All right. So yeah, like I was saying, please subscribe, please share. I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your night.